Guys, gals and non-binary pals, recording this review on a brand new device here with rhyme signatures, the nerdiest music review this side of hoping to God that the money you've spent results in better picture quality and that the investment into new technology ends up being worth it. And today we're going to be doing a review of the new Pure Reason Revolution album, Coming Up to Consciousness. I'm going to say it right off the bat. I'm a dog person, and I always have been. And the reason for this is because of my nan's old dog, Jane. Jane was a golden retriever, and she was the sweetest, softest, gentlest creature I've ever had the good fortune of knowing. She was a very good girl, and even though she passed away before I was even 7 years old, more than 30 years later I still remember her, and I still have the portrait that we got of her after she left us. It hangs in my hallway, and it's the first face I see when I go downstairs every morning, and even though we're now 3 decades gone, I still miss her. But seeing that picture reminds me of the love she gave the family and how happy she made everyone who met her. Jane is, simply put, the reason I love dogs. She's the reason I want to stop and pet every single canine I see being taken for a walk. She's the reason my brain goes to mush when I see a puppy out and about, bouncing around just being happy to be alive. Dogs are truly amazing and we really don't deserve them. So yeah, this album has been a tough one for me to face. Even though I've not had a dog on my own since Jane passed, the pain of losing a pet never really goes away. But through the catharsis of this new album from Pure Reason Revolution, it's weirdly comforting to share the grief of loss with someone I've never met. And that is why I feel that although this record isn't breaking into any new territory for the band, it is arguably the most impactful album they've released since The Dark Third. So, who are Pure Reason Revolution? They formed in 2003 at Westminster University and they put out their first LP in 2006 titled The Dark Third. And I picked this up shortly after it came out as I remember thinking that the cover art was pretty cool. And honestly, I was immediately hooked. The dark, sinister, gothic atmospherics with the incredible layered vocal harmonies between John Courtney and Chloe Alper was a surefire smash for me, and it became one of the most important albums of my early 20s. I followed their career with great interest, and the much more electronica-focused sophomore of Amor Vincent Omnia was initially something of a bitter pill for me to swallow. The prog rock and Pink Floydian influences were mostly gone, feeling more like a kind of twisted Depeche Mode, but I feel the years have been kind to this album and I now look back on it extremely fondly. I was less than enthused with their third album of Hammer and Anvil. I felt like it was the weaker parts of their first 2 albums thrown together into a blender and set to frappe. It just didn't work for me, but very few bands have a perfect run, let's be real with ourselves here. After that though, the band split up in 2011 and I was honestly devastated. I felt their true potential simply hadn't been realised yet and I was left yearning for more. So imagine my surprise and delight when in April 2020 Pure Reason Revolution rose like the phoenix from the ashes to deliver an absolute powerhouse of an album in the form of Eupnea. Much more akin to The Dark Third than AVO and Hammer and Anvil were, it saw the return of Courtney and Alper, and I hadn't realised just how much I'd missed their distinctive tones and their unique brand of darkened modern progressive rock. Now I'd assumed that this was going to be a one and done, but I was delighted to be proven wrong, as 2022 saw Above Cirrus released, and now in 2024 we have their 6th studio album of Coming Up to Consciousness. In spite of difficulties leading up to the release of this album, including the departure of Chloe Alper, who finds herself currently too busy with her involvement in the band James, and the introduction of Annika Shireen of High Lung as her replacement, the album is largely a success, with its poignant lyricism carving the way for an album that's very familiar but manages to stand on its own 2 feet regardless. Immediately what will strike you about the album is that it is very much cut of the same cloth as Eupnea and Above Cirrus. The vibe is very similar, the structuring, the moods, the atmospheres, etc, etc. It's all broad strokes the same beast, but frankly I'm all for this. Those 2 albums were masterpieces for me, showcasing that an old dog can learn some new tricks, and I feel that Coming Up to Consciousness subscribes to the idea of if it ain't broke, why fix it? The dueling vocals are back, of course, now between Courtney and Shireen, and in truth, if you hadn't told me that Alba had left, I wouldn't have known. Shireen fits into the band's sound perfectly, feeling every bit as ethereal and haunting as Chloe did, and it's the duality of hers and Courtney's vocals that make this album such a compelling listen. Lead single Dig Till You Die feels like classic Pure Reason Revolution, giving a slow build-up with a sombre and reflective atmosphere, accompanied with extraordinary vocals and great harmonisation and structuring that will feel right at home to the seasoned veteran and immediately gratifying to a newcomer. It's got kind of a proggier Radiohead feeling going on, and it's incredibly easy music to just drift off to and appreciate from an atmospheric point of view. The parts where the album hits the hardest, though, are where the lyrics directly reflect Courtney's experiences with having to say goodbye to his dog. It's absolutely devastating in places, and I feel that anyone who's ever lost a pet owes it to themselves to experience this record. Tracks like Betrayal and A Useless Animal make me choke up almost immediately after having become familiar with their lyricism. There's real emotion and pain in this record. This feels like the band's most personal and impactful work to date. There's genuine humanity to every single song here, and it's how deep and how intimate the tracks get that make this such an important record within their discography. Now, I did mention earlier how this isn't an album that's breaking any new ground, and I stand by that, but what it lacks in musical originality, it more than provides in emotive depth and passion. The album finishes on a 3-track run of Bend the Earth, Lifeless Creature, and As We Disappear, and I don't think the band has closed an album as impactfully as this since The Dark Third, with The Tonkin/Trembling Willows, and He Tried to Show the Magic/Ambassador's Return. It's a showcase of pure emotional power and songwriting magic, managing to feel spacey, atmospheric, and dreamlike, but with power and presence that we haven't felt from the band in nearly 20 years. It's an astonishingly potent end to an album that plays your heartstrings from the opening bars all the way to the very end. But what I appreciate most about this record, and the band in general though, is how much they have matured as songwriters in between each release. It feels like Courtney and co push themselves every single time, and while this last trio of albums have all been cut from the same cloth, sure, there's still a distinct identity and flavour to each of them, even if it may be as shades of grey rather than a full colour spectrum. Ultimately though, an artist is only as good as their chosen medium, and the palette that Pure Reason Revolution have stuck with is clearly one that works exceptionally well for them. Okay, I have a few minor quibbles with the album that I'm going to lay bare, and the first one really is more of a eyebrow raise more than anything else. It's mostly inconsequential, but I wanted to discuss it here and hope that the band can maybe shed some light on it. How come the digital version of the album is presented as a 14-track record with 6 interludes or intro tracks and 8 main pieces, while the physical album is just listed with the 8 tracks and no interludes? It's kind of odd, and I can't figure out why the digital release track listing is made so cluttered and busy. This feels like it's an interfering label decision, but it's really weird to me, and it irks me from an aesthetic point of view. I mean, why not just have this as the 8 tracks as it's presented on the physical release? Curious segmenting decision aside, this is quite a short album, coming in at just shy of 42 minutes, and while that's about typical for a Pure Reason Revolution album, I felt that the last 3 releases just haven't quite fully satisfied my appetite for the music I'm being given. This is purely a selfish thing though, and it's mostly because I still crave the hour-long experience of The Dark Third with epic 12-minute tracks like The Bright Ambassadors of Morning. As I mentioned before, and while I'm willing to give it a pass, this is still very much a modern Pure Reason Revolution album, and if you didn't care for their return with Eupnea or Above Cirrus, then this is unlikely to convince you further. I would personally quite like to see them flirt more with their experimental electronica side that they explored on a more Vincent Omnia again. I mean, not necessarily a full-blown dedication to that style, but maybe integrate it a bit more into the next album. Now, whilst I have enjoyed this style of sound for the last 3 albums, I do think the band needs to mix things up a little bit for whatever comes next, either by looking at their past or trying something completely new. Whatever form it takes, I feel that PRR need to evolve now, and that we've had these 3 albums, it's time for a new era, guys. Don't be afraid to get a little bit crazy next time is all I'm saying. So, what else can I say about Pure Reason Revolution's Coming Up to Consciousness? I knew this album was going to hit me like a dump truck the second I learnt about what influenced its lyrical content. And no matter how much I thought I was ready for it, it still managed to make me bawl my eyes out on multiple occasions. But I'm grateful for its existence. I'm grateful that Courtney took the time to make such a beautiful eulogy for someone so close to his heart. His pain reflects the pain of all pet owners when the inevitable comes, and through the catharsis of this record, we can see a way forward. And if that isn't the most beautiful gift of all, then I don't know what is. I think that even if the lyrical content isn't something you can personally connect with, and the tight songwriting, excellent vocal performances, brilliant guitar work, and somber atmospherics should certainly be enough to convince you that the return of Pure Reason Revolution to the prog space was one of the best outcomes for this wonderful little niche of music of ours. Now, I grabbed myself a physical copy of this one because I love the band and wanted to support them as best as I could, but I think for general audiences, I'd recommend grabbing a digital copy of this one. The lack of new ground and general air of familiarity to their most recent works does hold this one back from a stronger recommendation, but I would still insist that everyone who's ever lost a pet owes it to themselves to listen to this record. It's an emotional sucker punch and a beautiful experience. And now we play the waiting game and hope that PRR are going to stick around for a bit longer now that they're back and seem to be firmly established. This is all, of course, guys, just my opinion, so if you loved or hated this one, please talk to me about your experiences with the album in the comments down below. Please do drop me a thumbs up if you liked the video, please do tell your friends about me, and please do throw me a subscription if you've been enjoying my content. But until next time, guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.